everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the big show. My name is Mickey, and this is Mickey in the middle of the week, the quintessential show for Middle Americans, where all Middle Americans are welcome. Doesn't matter where you've been, where you're going, just matters that you're here right now and you consider yourself a Middle American, because Middle America is where it is. Middle America is where the best things happen. So anyway, I started my show at 8 o'clock tonight. So I'm a moron because I'm never early for anything, but the sun goes down late. So, or the sun goes down early in the summertime. The show's at 9 o'clock because the sun goes down about 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the summertime. So I set the show at 9 o'clock, but in the wintertime, I get all messed up. So anyway, welcome to part 2 of Mickey in the Middle on what day is today? On the 5th of February, 2025. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be talking about the wreck in D.C. We're going to be talking about shutting down U.S. aid. We're going to be talking about the CDC and the NIH and the communication shutdown that they've had there, and the fact that Trump and the Trump administration have a lot of people on edge because a lot of people think that they have lost their damn minds. So, Sherry Clark, I am so glad that you're here. Congratulations. Mark Calcaterra, great to see you. Carolyn, Greg Ledger, glad to see you. You're here too. You guys are winning the Mickey in the Middle message. What's that? Chat Olympics. So congratulations to Mark. You got the gold medal. Sherry, you got the silver. And Carolyn, you got the bronze medal. So congratulations. All right. So where are we? Let's start with this. If you do not have a 3D printer in your house, I am making things. I'm telling you right now, I got a 3D printer over Christmas and I am making things. And this thing is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. It changes colors. Now I messed this print up. All of this bottom part is supposed to be over here. And this is supposed to be a squishy ball, but I'm making stuff. And I just want to let you know that if you don't have a 3D printer, you're missing out. I got a 3D printer. I downloaded this and I printed it. And although this isn't right, I just wanted to demonstrate where the world is going. Pretty soon we're going to be able to, I'm going to print shoes later. So yeah, 3D printing is where it's at. All right. So where are we? Here's where we're at. We're going to get right into the show because everybody that tuned in at 8 o'clock already saw some of this. So I'm going to get through the first part really, really fast so I can get to the important part, which is 50% of our country thinks that the executive branch of our government has absolutely lost their mind and is going crazy. Now, I'm going to explain that and what's going on, in my opinion, in just a couple of minutes. So let's get right to what's going on over here. Let's get this right up. Let's go and talk about the preamble of the Constitution of the United States of America instead of the Constitution, because the preamble is part of the Constitution. We the people is how it starts. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. That right there is one heck of a way to start a document. That is one mouthful of one sentence. So there you go. All right. So there's a Constitution. There are 8,204,000,000 people in the world today. We are $36 trillion in debt. And there was an airplane crash in DC. And the latest thing is that the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high. Now, NTSB wants more proof that it was flying too high. I'm going to use some examples. They said that the Black Hawk helicopter was supposed to be no higher than 300 feet, but they are no higher than 200 feet, but they were probably flying at 300 feet. Let's talk about that really, really quick. I'm going to talk about it real quick, and I got some props this time. You're going to love this. This right here is a C-130. It's going to simulate the airliner. And this right here is a KC-390. I helped build the cargo compartment components for this airplane right here. And I flew on this one for 30 years. I got a lot of experience in the aviation industry, and I've even used NVGs, which are night vision goggles. All right, so here's what happened. The airplane was coming into land, kind of going this way, and the air traffic controller said, hey, something's going on that runway, so go around, then land over here on this runway and land this way. Meanwhile, we're going to pretend that this KC-390 is a helicopter, The KC-390 was supposed to be at no higher than 200 feet, flying down the Potomac River, and it went up a little bit. And when this came around, they collided and they fell into the Potomac River. First, I would like to say prayers to all the families and all of the victims and everybody that knew them. Prayers up for you in this very disturbing time. We know it's tough on you, but our thoughts and prayers are with you. What happened? Well, I'm going to go over this really, really quick because I think it's important. Everybody threw out a lot of different reasons why this accident happened, and it was an accident. And I honestly believe that nobody intended this to happen, but through a unfortunate series of events, which often happens in aviation accidents, a bunch of things happened and the airplanes collided where they shouldn't have. Two airplanes occupying the same space. When they sent them around to the other runway, it kind of collided like this. The airplane has to descend from whatever altitude it was all the way down to the ground, which means that it's going to be going at the same flight level at the helicopter at one time or another. If you're high and you have to get on the ground, that means you're going to have to go through a flight level. They're on short final, which means that the airplane has the right of way, but they can be anywhere from 1,000 feet all the way down to the ground. That's 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, 500 feet. The helicopter flying down the Potomac River was told to look out for the airplane. When you're in a dynamic environment like flying, what happens is you have to identify lights. You can't pick out an airplane unless it's a very unusual circumstance where it's highlighted against a bright background, and then you can only see the shadow of it because the lights are on the other side. So you have to identify lights. The problem is that when you have a bunch of lights and you're flying in a dynamic environment, that you don't know what light is what and how far away it is. So as the airplane came around to fly in and the helicopter was coming in, the helicopter says, yeah, we see them. They obviously identified the wrong airplane. Now, I went into this in great detail in the 8 o'clock show. But what you need to know is it's a dynamic environment. And let's say that the helicopter was off by 100 feet. That's the length of my yard. The helicopter is 15 feet tall. That means there's only 85 feet difference in altitude right there. The airliner that was flying was 25 feet tall. That if you take the 15 feet and the 25 feet, now you're 40 feet and you're saying that you're off in altitude. Why in the hell do you have two flight paths crossing at approximately the same altitude, regardless of who's flying the doggone airplane? So if one's a little high and one's a little low, and you don't even know whether the airplane was, because the airplane was in a descent, right? So it could have come through 300 and hit it at 200. It could have come through and hit it at 400. It could have come through and hit it at 100. All I'm saying is you had flight paths crossing, and unfortunately, they crashed. Nobody wanted this to happen, but it doesn't mean that somebody had this great, huge failure as a pilot. I've been in this situation many times before where they say, do you see that? And you go, yes, I see it, but you don't see it. It's like somebody standing in your living room. I used this analogy earlier. It's like somebody standing in the corner of your living room when you get home. You may not see them for 5 minutes because they're not moving. And it's relative motion that if one airplane's flying this way and the other one's flying that way, there's no relative lateral or vertical motion for them to distinguish what is actually moving and what is not moving. So the only way that you can identify an airplane is by the flashing lights and the relative motion to where you are. So tragic situation, but don't be blaming anybody for this one. It's just a bad thing. So Dan is, hey, Don, how you doing? Hey, Lane. Hey, Susie. How you guys doing? I'm so glad that everybody's here. All right, so let's move on. In Philadelphia, they also crashed. I'm going to let you know, I was very disappointed in our media services because they came on and they had aviation experts speculating about everything, about oxygen tanks, about engines falling off, about flight characteristics, about pilot, about fog, about weather, about spatial disorientation. Here's what the deal is. Mark and I were in the aviation industry for many, many, many years. We know that sometimes bad stuff happens to airplanes whenever they start flying. My personal thought is they had a catastrophic failure of some type because pilots that are experienced, when they get spatial disorientation, they go to manual instruments that are on all airplanes. And sometimes it's just a bubble. Sometimes it's just a bubble, and sometimes it's just a little level wings. But here's what the deal is. They would have been trained enough to go and do that. They're used to flying in the fog, but they're not used to catastrophic failures. And it crashed 30 seconds after takeoff. So I'm thinking from the time that they took off to 30 seconds later, they had a catastrophic failure. But I will not speculate farther than that. So pray for those families as well. All right, let's talk about Trump. Let's talk about the administration going crazy. The Trump administration is going crazy, it seems. And everybody's blaming Donald Trump. Let me tell you what happens in the C-suite of a business. You can have 50 different organizations, and all of those organizations are operating at one time. So if you are, let's say, a car manufacturer might have 15 different plants in the United States. They got to get all of their parts in. They got to coordinate all of their labor. They got to coordinate for all of their sales. That means that they have department heads at all of those. And all of those department heads are operating at the exact same time. You don't hear, hey, we're only going to worry about parts today. Then we're only going to worry about assembly in a month. And then we're only going to worry about transportation the following month. And then we're going to worry about sales the following month. No, they're doing all the stuff at the same time. So what happened? Donald Trump came in and he's acting like an executive, a CEO. He's like, all right, I have 15 different agencies in the United States government, 15 different cabinet positions, energy, transportation, Department of Defense, Department of Treasury, Department of Education, the State Department, the Department of Justice. There's a whole bunch of them, but he's got 15. All Donald Trump is doing is sitting in the White House going, hey, I would like your department to do this. And then that department goes and everybody's freaking out about what they're doing. Let's say the State Department and USAID. Somebody went over to USAID and said, what are you guys doing over here? And they went, well, we're spending $40 billion a year. And they go, what are you spending on? They went, well, we're saving the world. And when they started looking at the books, they were like, you're saving the world, but you're spending that on crazy shit. So they're like, hey, we're going to put a pause on all of the spending for 90 days in the USAID. And then everybody freaked out about that. So what is USAID? By the way, this is for NBC News. USAID is the international humanitarian development arm of the United States government, assisting nations in conflicts and other strategically important countries by alleviating poverty, disease, and other crises, according to a report by the Congressional Research Office. Doesn't that sound like it's absolutely fantastic? It does, right until you get to this and you go, hey, what are you guys spending your money on? This is what they're spending their money on. $50 million to fund condoms in Gaza, $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia workplaces, $70,000 for the production of DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 on transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, $37 million for the World Health Organization. That sounds like it's a good idea. $16 million in funding for institutional contractors and gender development offices, climate positive development. Does this really sound like they're doing their primary role, which is assisting nations in conflict and other strategically important countries by alleviating poverty, disease, and other crises? Does that sound like what they're doing? When you're doing, hey, look here, we're doing opera. We're providing condoms. We're doing other stuff that I just read off. That's the crazy thing about it. So they went in there and they went, where are you spending all your money? So the way that an agency like this works is the State Department will attest, and other NGOs, which are non-governmental agencies, NGOs, organizations, non-governmental organizations, what they do is they get money and then everybody in the organization's got to get paid. And then they got to have offices. And then they got to have trucks. And then they got to order stuff. That means they have to have warehouses. And then they have to provide infrastructure. So all of your money, $42 billion, is going to people and organizations in order to set up the $3 that they give to a poor person in a crisis. And they're doing that 42 billion times every single year. When Trump took office, their budget was $20 billion, but now it's $40 billion. And when you start looking at all the stuff that they're spending money on, they're spending money on people and offices that pay people in offices to give somebody candy or cookies or an opera or a comic book. That's not the way that United States aid is supposed to work. They're supposed to be out there doing the good work alongside the State Department in order to keep conflicts down, in order to promote the United States in a politically savvy way, in order to promote America throughout the world and to take care of people in crisis. But that's not what they're doing. So this is not going to end. This is, the halt is not forever. And the person that's running the show now for USAID is Marco Rubio, former senator. Now he's the Secretary of State. And he said, I am personally going to oversee everything that USAID is doing as my role of Secretary of State in order to make sure that they start spending their money the way that they're supposed to spend it and to reach the objectives of the United States of America. And I'm pretty sure it's not about operas and comic books and condoms, but that's where we're going. So there you go. So that's all I want to say about USAID is that has been temporarily halted. Next up, what I want to talk about is this is hilarious. All right. So I'm going to talk about this really, really quick. This right here, Trump orders cause chaos at science agencies. Look at him, man. He's like, I ain't playing no more. The torrent of activity left many researchers bewildered and fearful of what might come next because Trump said that he was going to get rid of woke, gender ideology, diversity, equity, inclusion, foreign aid, the Green New Deal, non-governmental organizations that undermine the national interest. So what he did is he said that he's going to review everything that the CDC and everything that the NIH does in conjunction with his executive orders that says that the United States is only going to recognize two genders. Okay. Later, he also said that they were going to take research and communications from the CDC and the NIH, and they were going to put them on hold for a while so that they can review what their scientists and researchers in the government are doing and what they put out to the public. And they tried to pull all of the articles that are already written and waiting to be published in scientific journals. They want them to be suspended as well and not published. And if a scientist from the government is on as an author of the paper, they want them to pull their name off of that paper until it is reviewed by Trump officials. Man, I hope that made sense. I hope that made sense. He's doing the same thing in the NIH and the CDC as he did with USAID. He said, wait a minute. We got to make sure that what you're doing and what you're saying is aligning with the new philosophy of President Trump's administration. And that's fair enough. They have pauses in government changeovers because every 4 years we're expected to have a new president. And if not every 4 years, every 8 years. So the president just said, before anything goes out, we're going to make sure that we're reaching the objectives of the United States of America, that our research says what the research actually says, and that we are moving forward because we have identified two genders. Let's talk about two genders. This is a sensitive subject for a lot of people. Let's talk about genders. I'm not afraid to talk about genders. I'm very, very clear on where I am in gender. When you are born, you are either born with a set of testicles or a set of ovaries. In very, very, very rare circumstances, are you either born with both or with none? In very, very rare circumstances. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. Let's take those folks off the board for just 1 second. Everybody talks about gender, and that's fine talking about gender. But what Trump has said is that on passports and official documentation like birth certificates, you only have two choices: with testicles, which is a sex of male, or with ovaries, which is a sex of a woman. I'm going to call those the two hard stops. You have the hard stop male and you have the hard stop female. Now, gender apparently goes somewhere between the two. That's a psychological thing. That's how do you feel about who do you want to love? Who do you want to spend time with? What they were doing on passports and on birth certificates is they were putting an X, but they weren't putting any specific genders that I could find, because you can't ask a baby what the gender is of the baby. So they go, hey, mom and dad, what do you want to put as the gender of the baby? Do you want to put male, female, or X? The X means everything in between. Trump said on passports and birth certificates, you can't have an X. You're either going to be one or the other. Fair enough, because those are the hard stops. Gender is everything that's in between. So you got the hard stops on the male and the female. Let's talk about everybody that's in the middle for just a second. Those are real people. Those are real people. I know a lot of these people. Here's what the deal is. They are still those people without, sorry about that. They are still those people without President Trump's written word. You still get to love who you want to love. You still get to go live your life the way you want to. If you want to be a pilot, an astronaut, a farmer, if you want to be a housewife or a house husband, if you want to work, if you don't want to work, if you can find a circumstance, if you want to play guitars, not play guitars, if you want to have sex with whoever you want to have sex with, except children, you're allowed to do that. You don't need President Trump's authorization to be who you want to be. All they're saying is in this medical research that we are going to say that we have hard stops in medical research. You can still say that AIDS is primarily transmitted in sexual activities between males, or sexual activities between people with testicles, or however else AIDS gets transmitted. You don't have to say any specific gender when you're dealing with medical and scientific factual information. As a result of that, a lot of our young people are very upset. You want to know why? Because for the last 20 years, everybody has been yelling at them about these genders. And how many genders are there? Is lesbian really a gender? I don't think lesbian's a gender, right? Being gay, I don't think that's a gender. But all of a sudden, LGBTQIA plus, two-spirit, all of a sudden they're like, well, these are genders. No, that you're just talking about who you love. And who you love and who you don't love, or what your sexual preference is. But you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Therein lies the difficulty, because for the last 20 years, all of the kids that have been through the education system and the Department of Education have been told that everybody's created equal. And here's the thing, everybody, that is still true. The problem with that being true, that all people are created equal, is the smaller that you break yourself down and you become an individual that has the equal rights of everybody else. But who, what, when, where, and why you are called, who, what, when, where, and why you want to be called is totally up to you. You can still do whatever you want to do. So now there's this huge outcry of being unequal on social media, whether it's X or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. All of these young people are going, this is not fair, and you are taking away my freedoms. They're not taking away your freedoms. They're not. They can't take away your freedoms. Nobody said that you can't love who you want to love. Nobody said you can't live with whoever you want to live with. Nobody said you can't say what you want to say. Nobody has said that you can't live your best life the way that you want to live your best life just because Trump changed some administrative policy that says that birth certificates and passports are going to have male or female on them. And I know that it feels like that they're not justifying your identity. The only person that needs to justify your identity is you. You're the only one that's necessary. Nobody needs to tell me that I'm Mickey Spillane. I am Mickey Spillane. I'm Mickey in the middle. I love almost everybody. There's a couple people out there I have a problem with. But as older Americans and older middle Americans, we need to understand that these young folks and these people that have these ideologies are still sensitive and they're still people, and we need to effectively and compassionately understand what their position is. It's called empathy. It's called sympathy. It's called, hey, look here, you can believe what you want to believe. I don't have to believe what you want to believe, but you can believe whatever you want to believe. We got into this mess because of the Department of Education. One of the reasons why I'm having this conversation with you right now is because I've gotten phone calls and I've gotten text messages and I've gotten other things that have said, hey, what do you think that Trump is doing? And I said, well, Trump is just doing Trump. And he's have all these different departments implementing the policies at the same time. So now it seems like it's overwhelming, but it's not overwhelming because in 6 months, none of this shit's going to matter anyway. And Trump will probably have a whole bunch of other stuff that we're worrying about rather than this. And the fact of the matter is that Trump was elected by 50, let's say that 51% to 49%. That leaves 49% of the country that is probably upset with him right now and says, hey, what's going on here? So when somebody called me, they said, hey, look here, they're affecting research and communications all the way across the board. They're affecting free speech of these scientists to publish whatever they want to publish. And that's not actually true. Those scientists can all do independent research and they can pay for it themselves or have somebody else pay for it, and they can publish all the papers that they want to. The papers that Trump and the CDC and the NIH are dealing with here are from the government. See, if you work for the government, you are working and speaking for the government. So nobody's taking away anybody's free speech rights when it comes to pauses in communications for the NIH and the CDC. So all of the colleges, all of the researchers, all of the scientists throughout the country, if it's on their dime, they can put out whatever they want. Nobody's stopping anybody from saying anything. So a scientist can say something to you, or a scientist can say something to me, and that the government can't get involved with that. The Free Speech Amendment of the Constitution of the United States says that the government can't stop us from speaking about the government. that we can criticize the government. We can say anything we want to say about the government, but the government does not have to give you a platform to speak. When you speak for the government as a government agency, then you are speaking for the government and they can control that speech because you work for them. And you can't speak for them using their money and say something that is not the official memo of the world or of the administration. Free speech is a tricky thing because it protects our freedom of speech to talk about the government. So I can say something to you, you can say something to me, we can say something about each other, we can say something about the government. The government cannot stop us from saying whatever we want to say or publishing whatever we want to publish, except if it's sedition or treason, apparently. And even the Supreme Court keeps siding with it's okay to say whatever. That's why you can burn a flag. You can burn a flag and the government can't stop you. That's freedom of speech, and the government can't stop that. They can't stop you from doing your own thing either. But it's very troubling because the Department of Education has taught our children that they are being oppressed and that we are a slave owner racist country. Because that's what the Department of Education has put out for the last 60 years is, hey, look here. They don't talk about all the great things that we do, and they come at it from the angle of the United States of America has been oppressive for women voting. Well, we had slaves. Slaves couldn't vote. Women couldn't vote. People with disabilities were being disenfranchised. They talk about all of the bad things, but they very, very rarely cover all of the obstacles that we have overcome. Like we overcame slavery. The original founders of the Constitution of the United States of America did not want slavery, but there was a whole bunch of people that were in the room that did. So that's where the 5/8 of a person came from, or whatever that number was. The 5/8 of a person came from indentured servitude and the people that were not the voting class at that time. That's where the numbers came for the representatives to Congress. That's where that number came from because they had to make a compromise. But the people that framed the Constitution, most of them did not want slavery. So a few years later, right? So we were founded in 1776. By 1790, we had become a country and we had established the Constitution of the United States of America. By 1860, we had gotten rid of slavery, and that kind of brushed over because they're like, it was slavery. Yeah, but we had a big civil war and a whole bunch of people died. And then they're like, and women couldn't vote, and blacks couldn't vote, and underprivileged people, and there was a poll tax. Yeah, all those things too. But we overcame all those things we overcame the Jim Crow laws. In 1890, black men could vote. In the 1920s, all women could vote. So we're talking 105 years ago since women were emancipated and could vote. So we're an overcoming nation, and this is why I put up this original document right here, which is the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. That's why I put that up, is we're working on it and we're getting better. But the Department of Education keeps referring back to telling our kids that we're bad. We're not bad. We're good. We're great people. We're working on it. That's why we have these freedoms. And then Trump talked about dumping the Department of Education. They don't do much. The Department of Education, here you go. 47% of funding for schools in America comes from the state. 45% of the funding for schools come from the local area. 8% of school money comes from the government. But the government controls a lot of different things. Oh, where can I find it? Hold on just a second. Exactly what does the Department of Education do? About Us, U.S. Department of Education. Where is it? About Us. Maybe that's it. Hold on just a second. I blew it, man. The mission of the Department of Education is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering. There you go. The mission of the Department of Education is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitive by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access for students of all ages. And then they had to get into a whole bunch of other stuff about culture, about transgenderism. And here's the deal is they abused the privilege of being the Department of Education. Do you know who sets the standards in each one of the states for education? The states set the department, the states set the standards in all of the schools. Every state has a Department of Education. 8% of the funds come from the federal government. The states are already doing it anyway, but the Secretary of Education and the Department of Education hold the states hostage over 8% of the money that they receive. I'd rather we just get rid of them and get the money straight up from us, or stop sending it to Washington so they can politically manipulate all of the states in their agendas. So that's what I got. So I was a little bit long, but here's what the thing is. We need to be sensitive to our fellow Americans, our fellow middle Americans. We need to understand that they're going through a hard time because a lot seems to be happening simultaneously, but it's the same thing happening across the Department of Justice, the Department or the Secretary of State, the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Transportation, the 15 cabinet positions. It's all happening simultaneously. So with that being said, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being here with Mickey on Mickey in the middle of the week on Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central, unless I get froggy and I go at 8 o'clock early. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming by. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. I love you. I want you guys to have a great week. And I will see you next week, 9 p.m. Central, right here on Mickey in the middle of the week. You guys be good. Take care.